Hi, thanks for tuning in today. We're going to talk about water kefir. Have you ever heard about water kefir or kefir? I always feel like I say it wrong. I say a few things wrong, like borax. It's supposed to be borax, but it's just borax? Borax. Yeah, see, I never say it right. Whatever you call it, probiotic is all the rage, as well as fermented foods, and I find it just helps me digest. It makes me feel better. So, and it's fun to come up with these concoctions.
Can you explain like how it's different than, say, because everybody's going to be familiar with
kombucha. Again, something you can say a couple different ways. So kombucha has got one mother, or Scooby, again, there's a bazillion different ways to say it. Whatever makes you happy. Don't let anybody judge you and your speech impediments. It's got one sort of culture that creates the rest of the microorganisms. These are grains. They're little, they're kind of, when I strain this, I'll show you what they are, but they're, you can see that sort of on the bottom there, they're a little bit cloudy. These have a bunch of different sources for the microorganisms, but both probiotic beverages. Kombucha is more of a vinegary taste, or like a stronger fermented taste. This is, you get a little bit of the sort of sulfur smell of it, but it like the kids think that it's just pop. Kids that don't know what real pop is like are like, oh, this is like pop. So probiotic benefits for your gut. It's always a good thing. It's also really quick. You need to ferment the kombucha a little bit longer. This is 24 or 48 hours, depending on sort of how bubbly you want it, and also how warm it is, what kind of temperature that you have. You need very few ingredients to make water kefir. You need a jar, some sort of glass vessel. Try to stay away from metal vessels as much as possible, and then I personally try to stay away from as much plastic as I can. So this glass mason jar, you probably pick one up at a secondhand store for 50 cents. You can buy the grains from, there's a couple different places that we can link up where you can have the grains. They're either dried or in a solution, in a sort of a molasses solution. To start your own culture. My grains keep multiplying, so every once in a while I'll thin out the herd and send out some grains. I haven't tried my hand at dehydrating them yet, but that's how a lot of people will dehydrate them and then freeze them. It's also great if you forget about it for a few days and you kill it. It is a living organism, so you need a glass container, the grains, some sort of stirrer in metal, or that's not metal, so wood or plastic, a strainer that is not metal, and some, you want filtered water. You don't want any chlorine in there, but you don't necessarily want distilled water because you do need those minerals and nutrients. So this is handy. We've done some work with Clearly Filtered, and it takes out chlorine, fluoride, bromine, radiological matter, plastics, all kinds of hormone disruptors, endocrine disruptors, and it tastes pretty good. So this is what I've been using for my water kefir.
I'll give you a link for that too.
We also need, and this is totally up to you, honey doesn't work because honey is antimicrobial, but sugar, unbleached sugar, raw sugar, or unsulfured raisins, dates, some sort of sugar source. The microorganisms need the sugar to live. So let's get this started. I am to start going to just dump everything into these this glass container here. So this glass container has got a latch lid, which is perfect because then it does keep the carbonation in. But it's also quite large. If I'm doing a double batch, I'll use something like this. You can just get these glass top bottles like this. This is a sort of a single serving, and oftentimes I will use these as well. Now, the first step of the process, you get your grains and follow the instructions. Quite often when you purchase grains, you will get some sort of instructions with them, how to awaken them, bring them back to life, how to rehydrate them, stuff like that. So you can see it's kind of like a little clump of gelatin. Some of them are big like this, and some of them are just little, but all of them will help produce. And the little ones will get to be bigger ones. So I just strain this into here, get it out of the way so that you can see the process from the start. You take your jar, you add either your 1/4 cup of sugar or unsulfured fruit, raisins, dates, figs, whatever makes you happy. I have seen a process where you heat this and turn it into a simple syrup, and then wait until it cools, because obviously the heat will kill off the microorganisms, but I'm not patient enough for that. So I just add a little bit of the water, use my trusty dusty chopstick to give it a good stir until it's kind of, the sugar's a little bit dissolved. You can also grab a lid and shake it if that's more convenient for you. Really, whatever works best. I have used regular table sugar. You could dance? Yeah, you could dance. It's sugar water, so...
You can dance if you want to.
You can dance if you want to. You can leave your cares behind. Depends on the size of the jar you want to do. I use a quart most often. Sometimes I use these double quarts as well. But just stir until the sugar is dissolved. If it's not all dissolved, that seems to be okay too. A few times I've just basically dumped the sugar in and give it a quick stir, and everything seems to be fine. So it feels like it's a pretty fail-safe thing to make.
Dummy proof? Even I could do it?
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Well, you're much smarter than you look. So. Kind of coax the grains back into the water solution. Now, I had actually forgotten about the solution, so it's not terribly carbonated. Basically, it's as the bacteria breaks down the sugar, this bee loves it. Sugar water, of course. As the bacteria breaks down the sugar, it creates carbonation. So if you like a more carbonated beverage, a little bit more sugar is helpful.
You gonna rescue that big guy?
Is there a big... Oh yeah, there is a big guy. So now I would just leave this on the countertop for 24 to 48 hours, depending on how carbonated I wanted, with this strainer right on top so that bees and fruit flies and debris flying around in the kitchen doesn't go into the beverage. So that's really all you need to do. 24 to 48 hours. Now we'll just time warp over to the finished product over here that's been sitting for a little while. And
so you did this one yesterday, right?
I did this the day before yesterday.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of dill in there. At this point, you can add, again, it needs more sugar to continue the process to become carbonated. But you can add fruit, fresh or frozen fruit. You can add juice. You can add just about anything as long as it's got sugar that isn't honey to help create more flavor. It's just carbonated sugar water at this point. Again, I use a non-metal strainer. I have this lovely trusty dusty silicone strainer. For 1 pint of mixture, you need a 1/4 cup of fruit juice, mashed fruit, or you can just, like, when we had little fresh strawberries, I just chucked the strawberries right into the bottles, and then it was fun to watch my roommates try to get the stuff out of the bottle. It was entertainment for me. You can also add herbs if you'd like. I'm gonna add a little bit of rosemary to this one, so it's gonna be a rosemary strawberry.
Nice. Oh, look at you breaking it up. Yeah, the same way I had to fight for the strawberries, I had to fight to get the rosemary out the last time too.
I took a 1/4 cup of frozen strawberries that I had frozen previously and just threw them in the blender, in the Vitamix actually, and so that they would be a little bit easier to get into the jars through the sieve, and then of course out after on the other end. Which usually isn't a me problem, it's a them problem, but I'm gonna be nice today. Depends on how much you like everybody, right? I have found that the fresh frozen fruit or has been more than enough sugar, but you can just add like a unsweetened apple juice or really anything that works for you, whatever flavor you like. I know that Raj's nephews really liked the grape. I used a little bit of Concord grape juice, unsweetened grape juice, which was a grape and apple blend, and it was a hit. Pour it into jars. And you want to give it a little bit of space because it is going to continue to ferment and it will build up the pressure. And if you don't burp your ferments daily, they will explode. We had one explode in the middle of the night all over the kitchen. And neither Raj nor I were home, and our poor roommate ended up with fermented juice all over.
Glass forever.
Yeah,
Got everywhere.
Yeah, in fact, almost 3 months later, there was glass shards in the living room, which is easily 20 feet away. So you want to give it a little bit of extra space, but just seal it up and leave it on your countertop for 12 to 24 hours, depending on how carbonated you want it.
And so how often would you need to burp it then?
I would burp it every 12 to 24 hours. Depends on how warm. There's a lot of variables. Depends on how warm it is, where they're being kept, and the quality of your glass bottles too. Yeah, this is probably good. So strawberry rosemary ready in 12 to 24 hours. And then after the fermenting time on the countertop, you just throw it in the fridge, and that halts the further development of the bacteria, and then it doesn't. I haven't yet, knock on wood, had one explode in the fridge, but it does tend to go fairly quickly. And I just give it a quick burp before it goes into the fridge. So this one is done. Let's move all of these to the side, and then I'll show you some finished product. I made a cherry rosemary, and you can see there's kind of a haze along the bottom. So this is from the bacteria has started to form crystals again in the bottom. So this is packed full of good bacteria.
That's not like the dead bacteria and stuff, is it? That's what I
Some of it would be die off, yeah. But if you were to put this back on the counter and add more sugar, then it would eventually end up in that crystal form again, like the grains. Okay. But I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. But it does sort of pop. You can see the carbonation cycling through it. I also made a stone fruit jalapeno. So watch for that recipe. It's really good with some sangria. And again, I like to give it just a little bit of a shake, sort of to get that pulp and the flavor and everything combined. But then be careful, and if it has been on the counter for a long time, I would open it in a sink just in case it foameth over. Once you've got it, you can always leave them open for a little while and they'll be less carbonated, but You can see.
What was that one that was crazy bubbly?
Carbonated
that you made earlier
beverage.
this summer? It was like an apple.
I made an apple, yeah. I used fresh pressed apple juice, but I had left it on the counter for a couple days.
And it was really hot at the time.
It was quite warm in the house, and yeah, it just like foamed. It would foam everywhere. It was crazy.
It's like nice little delicate bubbles, like champagne bubbles.
Yeah, that's delicious and good for your gut. So you don't have to feel bad when you add some gin or vodka to it. Have a cocktail. Yeah, the cherry's not my favorite, but you'll find whatever works best for you, whatever your preference is.
It's a nice way to play with local produce, like local fruits.
It
like
is,
that in season,
yeah.
and fruit juices, and if you've got an herb garden, then just playing with
Absolutely.
flavor combinations is.
Yeah, there's a myriad. There's so many different combinations that you could do, and really the sky's the limit for combinations. And I made a batch of the stone fruit jalapeno that was too spicy, so I added a little carrot mango juice to it, and it made it even better. Just threw it back on the counter for 24 hours so that it was bubbly again. It probably would be good, yeah. So let us know if you've ever tried it. Making water kefir, what your fails were, if you've had anything explode on you, or if you have any unique combinations that we should try out. I think I prefer it over kombucha, personally, and I'm not a fan of carbonated drinks generally, but yeah, I think it's a win.
Does this one make you hiccup?
This one does not make me hiccup.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, any carbonated beverage I will hiccup. Also, raw carrots make me hiccup. Fun fact. Fun fact about Holley. I think that's about it. We can wrap it up. If you have any questions, comment below. I'm happy to answer any.
Tag, share, follow.
Tag, share, follow. Have a super day.